Thank you everybody for joining in here while we try to pull the rest of the crew together. We're going to be talking to our Canadian licensing representatives that we work with at Live 365, and many of you may have your own direct deals. We're here now with Holly from SOCAN, and Holly's from the very beginning when Live wanted to go back online. Holly reached out and helped us to get all set up, and very, very helpful folks here. The thing I've realized in working with licensing for years, with Live 365 and others, has been that there is not an opposition between licensing organizations and music streamers. It is an environment where both people bring things to the table, and working together works for the artist and the streamers. So it's great to have these relationships with people helping to make this stuff come together. Good morning, everybody. Here we are.
Morning.
Good morning, Melanie. Thank you for joining in. We're all learning new ways to communicate and exchange, and although this isn't our family lunch, it is our family of webcasters and friends in the industry that we're trying to bring up to speed on some of the issues around how do you stream. And I was just talking to Holly earlier, mentioning that licensing is very interesting in that it is a multicultural, a multi-country event, multinational event. Each country has its own processes and its own licensing organizations. And just because you license in one doesn't give you the rights to go into other countries. And so we're here today with a couple representatives from Canada, which is where a lot of our Live 365 webcasters are interested in reaching. We share a language and a lot of artists and bands. And so we just wanted to bring folks up to speed on what happens and what's the issues, and what are the rights for licensing in Canada. And so I will I introduce Melanie. Here is from Resound, and I'll let them do the explanation, but my understanding when we did the agreements is that Resound gives us the rights to the sound recording, to the artists and the musicians that play on the sound recording that you listen to. And then Holly over here has the representative of the composers and the people that write the lyrics and the songs, and SOCAN represents those rights. And with the combination of sound recording and music works rights, and you have them in the US, and now we'll learn about how you can get those rights to make your station legal in Canada. So I'll turn it over. Who wants to go first and explain their side of the equation?
Doesn't matter to me.
No, I mean, Resound and SOCAN work super, super closely together. So it's great. I haven't had the opportunity to work with Melanie, but we are very, very much in tandem. So, I mean, SOCAN, as Johnie said, administer public performance and communication rights on behalf of authors, composers, music publishers in Canada. And I mean, I think sometimes it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not just Canadian music. We have reciprocal deals with societies like ours worldwide. So we administer virtually the world's repertoire of music under copyright in Canada. And we administer all those Canadian ears. So all those Canadian IP addresses and ears. You know, in a past world, it was viewers of television stations and, you know, people visiting concert venues on the ground in Canada. And now with streaming, with the digital world, it's all the eyes and ears that are tuning in from Canada. So that's how we kind of carve out the Canadian market and territory. and try to maintain a minimum value to music, to make sure that our members and our clients are fairly compensated, of course. And so that's the SOCAN piece. I'll hand it over to you, Melanie. Johnie did a good intro.
Thanks, Holly. So for resound, I'm sorry, is everyone else getting an echo?
A little bit.
A little bit, okay. So resound operates quite similarly in terms of the rights. It's communication and public performance, but we have different rights holders, being the performing artists and record labels. And similarly, where it comes to streaming, what we're licensing is communications in Canada. I think the main difference from SOCAN is we just do non-interactive and semi-interactive, but not fully interactive.
So one of the things that was interesting that Holly brought up and you hit on is that who is it that you represent? It isn't just Canadian artists. You're the licensing in Canada is licensing for the listener, not you represent all music worldwide through your representation deals, and you're focused on licensing the listening inside of Canada, right? It's not just Canadian artists.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, if a song, you know, by an Italian author is being heard in Canada, we're going to make sure that that's accounted for and that we flip the money back to the Italian society. So
Yeah, in exactly the same way for resound.
So, and so the people you represent at SOCAN, Holly, are is it the drummer or is it the tune?
It's the tune. It's the composition, like the actual lyrics and music. So, you know, Britney Spears could be performing a song. I don't know why I always use Britney Spears in my examples, but I'm sure she writes songs as well. You know, the people who actually wrote the song for her and the publishers that represent those people that wrote the song, those are our members and clients. So those are the people that we're going to make sure get paid every time that song is broadcast or performed or played. So it's hard to get a good handle on, you know, where songs are being communicated and being played, if you will, on all the multitude of different audiovisual streaming sites and audio sites and television stations and concert halls. So, I mean, we make sure that the writers and publishers, composers of the music itself are compensated.
And Melody, who are you representing?
So we represent two groups, both the record labels as well as all the performers on the track. So that's both the singers, musicians, whether they're featured or background. And all the royalties we collect are split 50-50 between those two groups, between the performers and the makers.
So the record labels are involved as they're the owners of certain rights?
That's right.
And then you collect the money and then you are the distribution agent in Canada for those monies collected.
Both resound and its member collect. So we also have a series of collectives that are our members that represent both performers and makers. So we distribute to them and they in turn distribute to their individual members.
And then when I'm securing rights, it's not just get a right to stream in Canada, but you were saying interactive and non-interactive. And is there a difference if I want to play my internet radio station in a gym or in a restaurant? than if I'm just flying to individuals? Are there different licenses, or is it just one license I get?
There's definitely different licenses from a SOCAN perspective. I'm fairly sure because we work on a lot of kind of tariffs or rules or laws that are similar or that work together. So there's definitely different, the actual music use itself defines what kind of license needs to be put in place. So I mean, if it's non-interactive, sometimes I get from web radio creators, they want to know, well, if people request songs, is that considered interactive? It's a really technical copyright board term. Interactive really kind of means that the listener themselves can't select the music for themselves in an on-demand fashion, like play it when they want to play it, choose it when they want to choose it, make a playlist how they want to make it. So non-interactive is that lean back experience, that radio style, that true radio style. There's semi-interactive, there's on-demand or interactive. There's, you know, services that let you listen to stuff offline, like cache downloading. So there's so many different uses. And of course, there's the music for business aspect, you know, background music, the way that's communicated. So yeah, I'm not going to get into all the different tariff names because it's so technical and it might bore everyone to tears. They'll just walk away. But there's definitely different uses, different rates from a SOCAN perspective, depending on how music's being used. Absolutely.
And when
it really works the same way for resound.
Mm-hmm.
Our tariffs are fairly parallel to SOCAN in terms of their uses. So
yeah,
if you're going to use music in a business, that's a different tariff, depending on the nature of the business.
And these tariffs, are they fixed tariffs, or they're negotiated by webcaster or service, or how do these tariffs, these rates get set?
For resound's perspective, it's a fixed tariff, and it's set by the Copyright Board of Canada.
Yeah, same on our end. You know, it's we don't come up with these laws. We obviously propose what we think would be right. But it's not just us at that table proposing, it's businesses proposing what they think would be right. And all the stakeholders, everyone involved in this business can participate and speak up and make their side of the story heard, because I mean, there's all sides of the story, right? And we're here to maintain the value of music, to protect our member and clients' rights, and to make sure we're holding up our end of the deal, right? But it's the Copyright Board that at the end of the day sets those rates, and then we seek licenses based on those approved rates. I mean, technology moves faster than the Copyright Board, of course. So we obviously, and I think I hear about a new type of business, especially online, at least once a month, something that doesn't perfectly fit into a box. But I mean, we want to encourage the health and prosperity of the digital, you know, ecosystem, and we're always making sure that we're finding the best way to fairly license services. If you called me and said, you know, this and this is happening, I would never say go away. That's not our mandate. Our mandate is, we call it an application for license, but anybody who seeks a license, we need to make sure that that license is set up, you know, unless they're doing something improperly. But I mean, the idea is, tell me about your business. What are you doing? How are you doing it? How's music being used? Where does this fit into our tariff scheme? And how can we fairly license it?
And one thing I'm starting to hear about is there is a kind of a new organization, from my understanding, up in Canada that both of you are participating in tandem. With what is the people are asking me, what is in tandem now?
Melanie, you want to take that?
Sure, that's a great question. And Holly, you made an tandem pun earlier. I don't know if that was intentional or not. So in tandem's something we're quite excited to talk about. It's a joint venture that just launched last summer between SOCAN and Resound. Now, one thing it doesn't do is license webcasting. That's still done between Resound and SOCAN respectively, but for a lot of businesses that need both SOCAN and Resound licenses, and Tandem is now a one-stop shop. So rather than getting 2 phone calls, 2 invoices, you've got one portal that businesses can log into and take care of both of their licenses at once. So it's really a merger of the staff of both Resound and SOCAN's licensing teams that are now working together as part of a tandem.
So if you're a restaurant and you want to play music or a gym or something, you can go directly to Tandem now and secure both of your rights, the
That's right.
sound recording and but on webcasting, a webcaster would still reach out to Resound and still reach out to SOCAN and secure separate rights.
That's right.
Yeah, so SOCAN maintain, like SOCAN proper. I mean, the SOCAN part of In Tandem, to me, it's like we're just one big family. But the tariffs or the music uses that actually stayed with SOCAN in the SOCAN offices are the broadcast and digital media uses. So all the television, radio stations, as well as My World, which is the digital world, digital AV and audio.
So this now that we know where we can go to get rights, and you need data besides just my name and my billing address. What kind of data do webcasters? I know that's our biggest issue with people streaming on all different platforms and tools. What key data do you need to distribute royalties from the webcaster?
Melanie, you want to tackle first?
Sure. So Resound's webcasting tariff is based on the number of plays. So we've got a reporting form the broadcaster can fill out to track the plays. We need to know, obviously, what the song is so we can get the money out to the right performers and makers on that track. And now that's for commercial webcasters. If you're a non-commercial webcaster, it's just a flat annual fee and you don't need to report logs.
So the difference between non-commercial, you mean a church group broadcasting or a community organization versus a business, right?
Yeah, it's primarily your campus and community radio stations, but any not-for-profit webcaster.
And so your educational, university, college, high school stations would fall into that group?
Exactly.
And so they just pay a flat fee and they have their sound recording rights for streaming.
That's right.
And you say the number of plays, but I assume I give you the artist and the song title?
That's right.
And the number of plays.
Yeah, whatever track information you've got. We've got specific fields that we collect, and that's all set out in the reporting form.
And Holly, what do people submit to you?
You know what, we really do mirror each other. It's exactly the same. For anyone who's not earning revenue, is a hobbyist or not-for-profit webcaster, they as well would pay an annual fee. We can request a sample of what they're playing. Most people are using some great software and have some really, automated logging of what's being played. So we can always ask for a sampling. But the idea is, yes, we have a reporting reference guide for those who are making money selling subscriptions or selling advertising, and they can report their revenue quarterly. So every 3 months, they're going to report their revenue and or their subscribers, as well as the titles of songs, and how many times they've streamed in a monthly period. And that way we can distribute. Obviously, we have a very, very, very extensive database of our own to match that too. So, I mean, even if the bare minimum that we require is the song title, the main artist, hey, if you have ISRC codes, we will take all your codes and everything you have, but we can very much, like, we're super flexible. Like, if you give us a bare minimum, we can match that to our internal database and get money out the door that way.
And that's interesting. You bring up the ISRC code. We hear a lot of that in the U.S. societies asking for that piece of data. Is that becoming an international standard? It's in the name itself, but are you doing anything to help distributors use supply services to find the ISRC code? I know that seems to be the biggest issue our webcasters have, is getting that piece of data for their playlist.
Yeah, I mean, we will match it internally to get money out the door. I think due to confidentiality and data security and stuff like that, I don't think that we are really able to kind of hand it out. I mean, in the SOCAN group of companies, we have DataClef, which was previously known as MediaNet, and they do kind of white label music supplying to the webcasters, as well as on-demand streaming services. So I think they help with, like, they have their own, you know, master recording database, and they have their own way of helping people fulfill that data requirement when they have to report to societies and so on. But like SOCAN, I don't think is allowed to kind of distribute that detailed data, but we'll definitely match it and make sure it goes to the right place internally.
So, and what, just to give us an idea, what are the rates? How much does it cost? Are there high minimums? What is that nonprofit? If I'm a webcaster starting my hobbyist station, although I'm not a nonprofit, am I looking at thousands of dollars to be legal? Or you know, we have a lot of hobbyist stations that stream a few hundred hours into Canada. If they wanted to be, and they do want to be compliant, how much is it a per performance? With minimums, how much are we actually talking to make sure we're compliant?
And for the non-commercial rate, it's definitely not thousands. It's $25 a year, flat rate. And for commercial webcast, the minimum fee is $100 a year. And then it's a per play rate based on the number of recordings to stream, which is 0.000102 of a dollar. So again, it varies based on the amount of music use.
Okay.
Yeah, for SOCAN, for non-commercial, I mean, you don't have to call yourself non-commercial from the get-go. If you're not earning money, there are minimum fees for the year, and that ranges based on like level of music use, if you're talk radio or if you're kind of have an all music format. So it ranges from $28 a year to $100 a year as minimum fees. If you are earning revenue, then it would be, there's an applicable rate based on those 3 levels of music use. The highest rate that it could be for non-interactive audio is 5.3% of revenue. So it's a blanket license to cover all the music being broadcast, basically.
Okay, so and to secure a license, and those are reasonable rates, somebody should, they they reach out to your organization directly?
Yes, absolutely.
That's right. And there's lots of information on Rezone's website as well. And certainly feel free to reach out and talk to us.
So we should post the links to these Resound and SOCAN, but the Resound website is the
Resound.ca.
and SOCAN
Is SOCAN.com.
Okay, so
But
there
I
you
mean,
got some information.
Call us and tell us what you're doing, and we'll figure out a way to get you licensed and make sure that you have that kind of that peace of mind. You're doing the right thing. You don't have to live in fear. It's really accessible. And I mean, as Johnie knows, when he has new business ideas or things are developing, all he needs to do is send an email, and we're shooting emails back and forth trying to figure it out.
And one of the questions that we keep bringing up from our webcasters now is, we've been at Live 365, we've been pretty much in the true radio service for all these years, where somebody puts together a playlist and you join it wherever you join it, like tuning into a radio station and you listen. A lot of our webcasters have been fascinated by this world of podcasting. Is there different issues when I want to put a song into a podcast and somebody can start that podcast at the beginning or later or something? This mix between streaming and podcasting, how is that affecting your societies and licensing?
Great question. So on the Resound end, our tariff excludes podcasting, so that's something that's licensed directly by our members. So you would need to reach out to the record labels themselves.
And from a SOCAN perspective, it's kind of two-tiered. I mean, we do qualify a podcast. It's complicated in that podcasts were once known as something and delivered through a certain RRS feed, and now they're kind of available through webcasting websites as well as through the digital service providers. So we kind of treat it differently depending on where it's being communicated from. At the end of the day, we do classify it as a non-interactive audio use, but we would also recommend that that the synchronization right would be cleared directly by publishers and record labels. Because a lot of these podcasts are, you know, highly monetized, and there's a lot of value that intro song is bringing to that piece. It's you're marrying that music to a brand at the end of the day, and an economic model that, you know, we would want people to be seeking permissions directly for that as well.
Okay, so do you, if I have an idea of a song or something, can I come to you to find out who the owner of the song is? Or when you mention deal directly with the record label, how do I find out about that?
We have an internal synchronization agent because SOCAN acquired the Reproduction Rights Society, SODRAC, going back about 1.5 years ago. And they handled synchronization rights specifically for their clients, which is heavily Francophone French songs and repertoire. So we do have someone in-house that can check if it's in our repertoire, or for sure help you coordinate. He obviously has some great relationships with publishers and can kind of give you a inside scoop on who to reach out to. It's a right that, you know, that rights holders can kind of decide if they want it to be there or not.
And similarly, we may be able to provide information onto who the owner is and refer you to the right record label. Or the other avenue would be to go to one of our member collectives that act for makers, such as Connect or SoapRock.
And you brought up that if Britney Spears wants to play in Canada, you're going to collect the money and get it back to the owner there. All your Canadian artists, if my webcasters or any webcaster is playing that in the US, how do they need, if they're just streaming in the US, do they need to go to you to get the rights to Canadian artists, or how does that work?
So, I mean, if they've geo-blocked, if they have blocked the Canadian listenership, then they would not, like SOCAN would not seek a license from a webcaster that has decided to kind of turn off the Canada switch. The idea is that, when those Canadian authors, composers, publishers' works are being communicated to the American ears, BMI, ASCAP, CSAC would be administering that on that side of things and assuring that the money gets flipped back to SOCAN for us to pay people out.
So you're
And very similar on our end.
Yes.
Sound Exchange is the equivalent to Resound, and we have agreements with them where we exchange royalties.
Very interesting. Yeah, we have Travis Ploger from Sound Exchange later in the day here talking about, so you're saying when we report to Sound Exchange, a Canadian artist, then they have an arrangement with you to get the payment up to you.
Exactly. And when their members' recordings are played in Canada, we send that money to them.
And is Canada unique in the multinational licensing thing, or would the UK or Germany or Korea, or do you work with societies around the world? Because obviously webcasting, if you're not geo-blocking, it's a global project.
For sure, yeah, we have, I don't know the exact number of sister societies, but we have basically every country that has an operational and functional society in place. We're going to want to, or we already have agreements in place to assure that. And even in our reproduction rights branch, that SOCAN reproduction rights, we also have reciprocal agreements with societies on that end of things too. So we try to, and that's, we know it's complicated. Music rights are, clearance is not for the faint of heart. So we try with these reciprocal agreements and with these kind of initiatives like in tandem to simplify it as much as we can, while, making sure everybody's rights are respected, which is not easy, but we, my heart goes out to people that are just new to it all, and it all seems super overwhelming. But it's, if you sparse it out piece by piece and you really drill down to what you need for the business or the project or the hobby you're trying to do, it's doable,
And you brought up in tandem again, which is a new attempt to simplify this, as you say. There is another organization I've heard of, CMRRA. Are you familiar with that licensing organization, and what do they provide?
So CMRRA is the Reproduction Rights Society of Canada. Now, so it used to be that SODRAC and CMRRA were together under one reproduction rights umbrella called CSI, not crime scene. CSI is just the umbrella organization that was dealing with reproduction rights. And then when SOCAN acquired SODRAC, it slightly fragmented that, reproduction rights repertoire. So CMRRA, most of their clients are the major publishers. Of course, it's a wide range of publishers, composers, and then SOCAN acquired that SODRAC piece. So when you put a reproduction rights license in place in Canada, you have to go to two organizations to cover kind of the full gamut of repertoire.
Yeah. Another agents to talk to.
Yes, but we obviously, although we don't license people together, we're always in close communication with them, and I'm providing their contacts to people that are contacting me and vice versa, so that we make sure that we all have music makers' interests at heart. So we might not all be under one roof, but we're always trying to connect the dots for people, especially, Europeans or American companies, American lawyers even. You figure lawyers have all the answers to everything, but even they will say, who else do I need to reach out to in your territory? Because every territory is slightly different. So then I kind of have a quick email template with everyone's contact for the different uses and different reasons. And it's, I think it's important to provide that educational piece to everyone, because it's complicated and it's ever changing.
One of the questions I see coming in here too is we're seeing a lot of terrestrial broadcasters, AM and FM stations, that have dealt with licensing for years, at least on the composition side. More and more, even the smaller stations are beginning to stream online now, and we get a lot of questions like, if I'm a Canadian AM station and I have a license, does that cover me for my internet stream? Do you license, Melanie, does Resound license terrestrial radio stations?
That's a great question. We do for their over-the-air broadcasts under a tariff that's been in place for many, many years. Originally, simulcasts were going to be covered under our webcasting tariff, but the Copyright Board decided it wanted to deal with that separately under the commercial radio tariff. So rates will be set as part of the next commercial radio tariff, but they haven't been set yet.
So there is a separate, if you're an AM station, FM station, broadcasting in Canada, and you want to stream online, we're going to reach out to you and secure additional tariff license.
Yeah, once the tariff's in place.
And SOCAN, do you have, if I have a SOCAN license for my FM station, do I need to do something else for my streaming?
It's kind of one report for both. Like you would look at the revenue for the terrestrial portion and the revenue for the online portion, but it's kind of one report form. So we have non-commercial and commercial tariffs that have been in place, rates that have been in place for forever, for a really long time. And we just kind of simplified the reporting format. No major changes on rates. It's just kind of, it's an easier way to report for both. And I mean, when you're a radio station, you're likely selling ads across, all your properties. So sometimes it might be really tricky to, excise that internet portion. So it's fairly simplified.
And you bring up rates again. Somebody's asking, so your Copyright Board sets the rates. Do they do that on an annual basis, or is, I think here in the US, like with Sound Exchange, the US Copyright Board has hearings and they set them for 5-year periods. How often are your rates changed or renegotiated?
There's no set period like there is in the US. So what happens is the collectives propose tariffs, and then the Copyright Board starts a proceeding every few years. So in the case of Resound Tariff 8, it was last certified in 2014. There is a proceeding underway for the next rates, but we don't have a hearing date yet. So that's likely to be a little ways off still.
And
so you would still pay the 2014 rates until new rates are set?
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
And the SOCAN?
Same exact thing. It's the most recent rate stands until a new rate, has been approved. And yeah, it's a lengthy process, and there's all kinds of variables that can, delay things and make it so that, we don't get necessarily answers as quickly as we'd like, but we do have the opportunity to propose, rates I believe it's every year that we can propose rates. I'd have to ask legal, that's in their purview. But I'm on the ground talking to people and I'm, hearing people's, encouraging words and discouraging words. So I always circle back to legal and say, this is what I see of the environment now. And, this is what people are frustrated by. This is what people are happy about. And usually the response from people on rates is that, hey, that's pretty accessible. So that's always good.
Any other questions out there in the audience? Jason, can you tell us how to send in your questions?
Yeah, you guys can go ahead and just type the questions in the chat. I think there was a couple other ones. I'm not sure. I think we answered them. There was a question about CMRRA and how do we work with them? Or how do you work with them? I wasn't sure if that one I thought we went over.
Yeah, I mean, CMRA has, I don't know who the me is there, but you should just reach out to their general line if you had questions, especially on the webcasting side. I would hate to put words in people's mouths or another society's interpretation. So you could always reach out to me, and I can CC somebody over there and send you their way if you have questions on the reproduction rights side of things. Yeah, they're great communicators. I'm sure they'll get back to you right away.
And generally that's kind of, they're representing ephemeral rights?
Sorry, no, I should tell you what they do.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I said the Reproduction Rights Society, they actually represent the same member base that SOCAN does, in that it's publishers, authors, composers. But a reproduction is a copy. So it's, the limited download copy, the copy within a stream, the copy on a server. These are not the technical terms, so don't quote me on it, but these are the digital copies that you might be interested in, discussing with them, and the relevance to your business, whether it's relevant or not. And they can, there's obviously information on the Copyright Board of Canada website for resound tariffs, SOCAN tariffs, as well as CMRRA tariffs. So you can get general information there, but it's always good to speak to someone who's working at the organization to see how certain stuff has been interpreted, and what the reporting requirements are.
Thanks. Yeah, and that's a good answer to that one. I know that one's kind of confusing for us. I don't know that we have kind of quite the same, at least here in the US, quite the same entities that we deal with for the streaming side. I think some of that's bundled in with some of the other licensing. So that's an interesting one for us. Had another one that was good here that, again, if we answered this, I apologize. I was trying to do a few things here. Is there a public list of services licensed with you? So with Sound Exchange, for example, we can go to Sound Exchange's website and they kind of publish this. Here's our publisher or licensed broadcast list, right? And so I can go there and I can go, oh yeah, look, there's Live 365. They're licensed with Sound Exchange, and I know that I can trust them because, or I know artists are getting paid and compensated because of that. So I think the question's kind of, is there a place where I can go and say, hey, here's the different companies that are registered with, with SOCAN or with Resound? Is there a place, something like that, a database?
You want to take it, Melanie?
Sure. There isn't on the Resound end. And a main reason for that is we've got confidentiality provisions under tariff. So actually who we license would be considered confidential.
Yeah, and as you can imagine, we want to make sure there's compliance and that people are doing things properly and that people are working with people that do things properly. But we also, it's not really, we're getting in the way of business operations also. We're not trying to shame people that are not compliant yet that may become compliant, so same on our end. It's really, really, really tight privacy, confidentiality clauses that don't allow us to make that information public.
If somebody like us wanted to say, hey, please tell them.
Oh, yes, of course. So we do have like a snazzy license to play logo, a digital logo, that we, once you're licensed, we send it off to you so you can proudly sport it on your website, of course. We want you to scream it from the rooftops. We just will not, if if we haven't gotten through to you and you missed your payment for 2020, but you're going to pay in a month, if someone calls me, I'm not going to say, hey, that guy, yeah, he's trouble. I mean, we just want to make sure that, we get people licensed, we get people educated, and there's no wall of shame. There should be a wall of pride, but we're just not allowed to do it.
Yeah, well, you might be a little different than your American counterparts in some of that. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I think one of the things for us at Live 365 is, we have a publisher, a broadcaster comes to us and we say, hey, we're you're going to be covered for Resound and for SOCAN, and they go, well, prove it, and the idea is, so we could display something and they're going to go, are you really licensed with them? And I think that's kind of, so we're a little bit unique that way, where we would want the confidentiality clause removed, right? Where it's like, hey, tell everybody that, anyone who asks you, go feel free, as long as we're in good standing.
Yeah, and I think, Johnny, I think we've had one or two opportunities where people kind of, hey, I don't blame anyone for being a skeptic about anything online, but I think we've had the opportunity where Johnny's emailed me and copied someone in you copied in the skeptic and said, hey, Holly, can you confirm our licensing status? And then I happily respond, it's more just, you can tell people, we can validate you telling people. I just can't, put public on a website that you are or are not licensed.
That makes sense. I think we didn't have anything. We had somebody ask about, do I need a license if I embed YouTube on my website? I'm not sure if there are people that sometimes, even in the broadcast world, that will say simulcast their audio stream on services like Facebook, like we're doing right now, and like YouTube. Is there some sort of coverage on that, or is YouTube supposed to have that coverage, or how does that work?
That's a great question. So yeah, I mean, because we are in the business, SOCAN is in the business of communication rights, since, the content that YouTube is communicating to the public is for YouTube to report and to remit to SOCAN on. And that includes all the embedded links wherever they are. So of course we centralize that process to obviously work with YouTube on getting, the reports, the data, and the revenue figures. So you wouldn't have to have a separate license for that YouTube embed in, on your website. What you may come across, which a lot of various types of audiovisual streamers come across, is that the world of audio licensing is a little less complicated than audio-visual licensing. So what will happen on social media platforms is usually one of three things, depending on the platform and what tools they have for rights holders. But Content ID will pick up usually master recordings more than composition, but compositions too, like if they're played live. And it will give rights holders the opportunity to track those videos, to monetize those videos, or to remove those videos. So, that's more related to synchronization rights to the composition, master recording, than a Resound and SOCAN piece, or at least to a SOCAN piece. So you just might, that blocked content aspect, if you're live streaming, audio-visual live streaming your audio, adds a layer of complexity that like if you have a SOCAN license in place for your web radio, that doesn't cover that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. We had another one from Jacob saying, are there going to be any plans from the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission to regulate internet radio stations in Canada. So any plans from the Canadian Radio, Television, Telecommunications Commission to regulate internet radio stations in Canada. You guys got any knowledge on that?
I can't really speak to that very much at all. I believe there have been some submissions wanting some improvements, such as increased Canadian content when you stream into Canada, but I can't really speak to the status of that.
I can say that I do get lots of calls from, you know, hobbyists, whether American or Canadian, hobby webcasters who, without any laws at all, love playing Canadian music. So regardless, I mean, I can't really speak to it either. I'm not super up to speed on it. But I do know that, you know, grassroots, you know, people who, you know, do this as a hobby, love promoting local artists. They love promoting Canadian artists, independent artists, American, international. You know, it's really beautiful, the web radio world, because every little niche market that maybe was not as prevalent or didn't get their chance on terrestrial radio has the outlet and has the opportunity to reach their audience, reach their niche audience, and you know, and carve that out for themselves. So I think that, you know, regulated or not, I think there's just so much creativity and so much inspiration in that side of things.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think that's it for the questions, Johnny. I don't know if you want to wrap up here.
I mean, I appreciate everybody joining in this quick last-minute attempt to replace the chance they all get together at the NAB or wherever convention you go to. You know, our real objective here was not to answer or solve every issue, but to show that there are real people here, there are real organizations, there's real attempts to make this work for the artist and for the webcaster, and so reach out and start an exchange, and you'll find that it's possible to do what you want to do and do it legally and compliant. And as we heard some of the rates here, getting into Canada, making your webcast available is not going to break the bank. Even for hobbyists and nonprofit organizations, the rates and the hassle to provide data should not stop you from doing it. And that lets everybody know who's playing what. In any last comments that either of you would like to just address to webcasters or companies that are supplying the advertising or the hosting that may be listening in or tuning into this later, that you'd like to leave in last words to folks?
Just want to say thank you for your interest. Really appreciate everybody joining. And certainly feel free to reach out to Resound directly if you've got any other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Same on my end. And I just have a lot of respect for, you know, companies like Live 365 who are, you know, trying to make it a little bit easier for creative people to do what they want to do and bridge the gap between, you know, societies like ours and the outside world. And thank you. Yeah, thanks for taking the time to listen and to be here.
Well, here we go with the first annual World Audio Day and our first presenters of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I look forward to continuing our conversations and giving you my credit card number.
Thanks, Johnny. All right, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right,
Bye, everyone. Thank you again.